In a small town nestled between gentle hills and quiet lakes, there lived an elderly man named Elias, known by many as the listener. He never spoke more than necessary, but when he did, his words carried the weight of seasons, of time and silence well spent. People came to him not for solutions, but for peace. And if they listened long enough, they often left with more than they came for. One evening, a young woman named Clara came to Elias. Her face wore the fatigue of ambition, the kind that never seemed to rest. She had climbed ladders, chased titles, earned accolades. Yet a tightness gripped her chest that no achievement could loosen. "I've done everything right," she said. "Why does it still feel so wrong?" Elias poured her a cup of tea, its steam curling like the breath of the earth itself. "Tell me," he said gently, "who is the one trying so hard to be someone?" Clara frowned. "I don't understand." "That one inside you who is never satisfied," he said. "What does she fear?" She didn't answer, but her silence was filled with something older than words. Elias leaned back, letting the quiet settle. "We all carry a little voice, one that whispers, 'Be more, be better, be someone.' That voice is not your enemy, but it is not your truth either." A breeze passed through the open window, and the candle between them flickered. He spoke again, slowly, as if each word was a stepping stone across a river. "The ego is a craftsman. It builds masks, identities, stories. I am a winner, it says. I am a failure, it says. I must be admired. I must be respected. And we believe these stories so completely, we forget we ever existed before them." Clara looked out at the dusk-stained sky. "So how do I let go?" Elias smiled, not with pity, but with the recognition of one traveler to another. Letting go isn't about destroying the ego. It's about seeing it for what it is, a helpful guide that overstepped its role. Like a lantern that insists it is the sun. He continued, "Begin with awareness. Notice the moments your pride flares or your shame stings. Don't fight them. Greet them as you would old friends passing through. Observe without judgment. The ego thrives on conflict and comparison. Without your resistance, it quiets." She nodded slowly. "But what if I lose my drive?" True motivation doesn't come from ego. It comes from meaning, from compassion, from presence. The tree does not grow tall by shouting at the sky. It grows because it surrenders to the soil. There was a long silence then, filled with the sound of night arriving gently. Elias added, "When I was younger, I too believed I needed to prove myself. I carried my father's expectations, my culture's ideals, my own unkind beliefs like a second skin. I chased titles, approval, and perfection. And then one day I was standing at my mother's funeral, and I realized none of those things could touch the silence in that moment. The ego stepped back, and the soul stepped forward." Clara's eyes filled with tears. She didn't try to hide. "I don't know who I am without the chase." "Then you're ready," Elias said, "because now you can begin to remember." She looked at him, not expecting more, but somehow already lighter. And somewhere deep inside, the echo of her being answered, not with a shout, but with a whisper, "I am already whole." Some weeks passed, and Clara found herself returning to Elias more than once, not for answers, but for a kind of presence that softened the noise inside her. The world outside still moved at its hurried pace, but something in her had begun to slow. And in that stillness, she started to notice what had always been there. She shared with Elias how difficult it was to be around certain people. A colleague who always seemed to belittle her ideas. A family member who needed to be right. "I try to stay calm," she said, "but sometimes it feels like they reach inside and press every button I didn't know I had." Elias smiled gently. "They're showing you where you still hold tight." She sighed. "But I don't want to react. I want to be above it." "Wanting to be above it," Elias said, "is also ego, just dressed in spiritual clothing." Clara laughed, more out of recognition than humor. "You see," he continued, "the ego doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, 'I'm better because I'm calmer. I'm superior because I don't react.' But peace isn't superiority. Peace is humility. It's knowing you are human, and so are they." He leaned forward. "There's a saying, if someone can trigger you, they've found something you haven't healed. Every difficult person is a mirror. The ego wants to smash the mirror, but the soul wants to see." She sat with that. "It's not that you won't feel anger, frustration, or sadness," he added. "You will. But when you stop identifying with those emotions, when you no longer say, 'I am angry,' and instead say, 'Anger is here,' then you create space. And in that space you remember you are the sky, not the storm." Clara closed her eyes. She could feel the storm within her, but now she was watching it from a distance, not drowning in it. "Letting go," Elias said softly, "isn't passive. It's the most courageous act of all. It's releasing your grip on the story that says you must be right, must be seen, must be loved a certain way, and choosing instead to just be." "But what about the people who hurt me?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without hate. It's releasing the hook from your own heart, so you no longer bleed when you think of them. You let go, not because they deserve peace, but because you do." Her breath trembled. "That's not easy." "Truth rarely is," Elias replied. "But it is always simple." The fire crackled beside them. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang into the night. "Sometimes," he said, "we carry pain like a badge. Proof that we've lived. Proof that we've suffered. But eventually, even that becomes a burden. The ego says, 'Don't forget what they did.' The soul says, 'Don't forget who you are.'" And in that silence, Clara felt something shift. Again, not the kind of shift that explodes like lightning, but the kind that creeps like dawn, unnoticed until the room is lit. She was learning that peace was not something to be gained by effort, but something uncovered by surrender. She was starting to remember the way home. Weeks turned into months, and Clara began living more from presence than from performance. Her days still held challenges, of course, deadlines, disagreements, unexpected griefs, but she no longer measured her worth by how she handled them. There was something in her that had stopped needing to win, to defend, to be seen a certain way. But then came a setback. She lost an opportunity she had worked hard for. Someone else, less experienced but better connected, was chosen. The familiar voice returned. "You're not enough. You should have done more. You failed." Clara came to Elias that evening, her steps heavy, her voice quiet. "I thought I was past this," she said. But all those old feelings came back. Envy, self-doubt, shame. "I feel like I'm back at the beginning." Elias shook his head gently. There is no beginning and no end, only layers. He poured her tea, as he always did, and let the silence settle before continuing. Even the most serene lake is stirred by wind. The difference is it no longer blames the wind. She looked at him. But I don't want to feel this way. He nodded. Of course. And yet, what if these feelings are not a problem to solve, but a doorway to pass through? She looked puzzled. The ego sees setbacks as signs of failure. The soul sees them as teachers. What if this envy, this ache, is not here to shame you, but to show you where you still believe you are not whole? Clara said nothing. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Elias continued. We were taught to compare ourselves, to strive to outperform, to outshine. But a flower does not bloom by competing with the one next to it. It blooms because it is its nature to do so. He looked toward the garden where evening light was painting long shadows. You are not here to be better than anyone. You are here to be fully yourself. Clara whispered, but what if that's not enough? Enough for whom? Elias asked gently. For the world? For your parents? For the version of you that learned to hustle for worth? The ego will never feel enough because it lives on comparison. But the soul knows you were enough the day you took your first breath. She closed her eyes and breathed in deeply, letting the words settle. You've not gone backward, he said softly. You've just uncovered another room in the house of your being. And every room needs light. A breeze passed through the room, lifting the edge of her sleeve, almost like a touch. And she smiled, not because everything made sense, but because she no longer needed it to. Peace, she was learning, wasn't the absence of pain. It was the presence of trust. Trust that she could feel the ache and not be defined by it. Trust that storms came and went, but the sky remained. She was not failing. She was unfolding. One crisp autumn morning, Clara sat on a bench near the temple garden where Elias sometimes walked. The leaves had turned gold and amber, whispering their quiet farewells as they fell. She had started coming here on her own, no longer needing Elias to speak in order to hear his wisdom. It had begun to echo in her soft, steady, always near. That day, however, Elias did come, walking slowly with his cane. He sat beside her and smiled without words. After a while, Clara said, I used to think peace was something I could earn, like a reward for getting life right. Elias nodded. And now? Now I think, maybe peace is what's left when I stop trying to earn anything. He chuckled softly. Then you're starting to see. She looked at her hands. But even now, I still catch myself wanting to control things. I want people to see me a certain way. I want plans to go my way. I even want my own thoughts to behave. Elias leaned back and closed his eyes. Control is the last stronghold of the ego. It wears many disguises: perfectionism, anxiety, even kindness that expects something in return. He paused before continuing. We think we control to stay safe, but we control because we're afraid. Afraid of loss, of rejection, of being unseen or unloved. So we build these invisible prisons, mistaking them for protection. Clara's voice was quiet. How do we stop? You don't stop by force, he said. You stop by seeing. Like waking from a dream, not destroying it. The moment you realize you are clenching, you've already begun to release. He turned to her. Peace isn't passive. It's the fierce surrender of needing to control the uncontrollable. They sat in silence for a time, the wind carrying the scent of pine and earth. Somewhere, a bell rang in the distance. "Let me tell you a story," Elias said. "There once was a monk who carried a heavy pack up a steep mountain. Along the way, people mocked him. Stones blocked his path. Rain soaked his robes. Yet he never stopped. At the top, another monk asked, 'Why did you not put down the pack?' The first monk smiled and said, 'Because it was never mine. Only the idea of it was.'" Clara tilted her head. "I don't understand." "Most of what we carry," Elias said, "are not real burdens but thoughts about them. Control is not about the situation, it's about your fear of what happens if it doesn't go your way." He turned to her. "Can you trust the path without mapping every step?" She took a long breath, the kind that seems to open a door inside. "I think I'm ready to try." Elias nodded. "Then let life surprise you." He stood slowly, and before he walked away, he said, "Freedom does not come from getting everything in order. It comes from seeing you were never trapped." As the morning light stretched long across the garden, Clara closed her eyes and imagined her hands opening, letting go of a rope she'd been holding far too long. And what came in its place was not chaos, not fear, but a quiet, soft, and sacred, and utterly free. Time moved forward, as it always does, but Clara no longer chased it. She walked with it, beside it, as one walks with a familiar companion, not grasping, not running ahead. There was more silence in her days now, not the silence of emptiness, but the kind that hums with presence. One evening, as clouds gathered gently above the hills, Clara returned to see Elias one last time. She brought no questions. She only wished to sit and, perhaps, to say goodbye. They watched the sky change together, the light melting into deeper hues. After a while, Elias spoke, his voice softer than ever. "There's one last thing I should tell you," he said. "A truth that often comes at the end, though it lives at the beginning." Clara waited. "The ego," he said, "will never be fully gone. It will whisper, dress itself in new robes, hide in corners. And that's all right." He turned to her. "Your work is not to destroy it. Your work is to live beside it with kindness, with awareness, with humor even. Let it be part of the play, but never the author of your story." She smiled. "I think I understand that now." As she stepped forward, something within her stepped forward, too, not a new self, but her truest one. No longer driven by the ego's hunger, no longer afraid of being unseen. Just walking, just being, just free.